she's funny, she's smart, she craves chocolate every day, and she is the Greek goddess of comedy. Here is your host, Ellen Karis.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Karis's Comedy Corner. My name is Ellen Karis, and you are listening to the guest edition of Karis's Comedy Corner. Yes, we have a guest, but a special guest. I mean, we went to the smart box to get this guest. But before I start, got to thank the sponsors. It's been a while. First sponsor is Baywalk Marketing. Go to their website, baywalk.net, for all of your advertising and marketing needs. They can help you with any flyer that you might need, demographics to analyze your business. Also, experts in the Greek community, go to their website, hollywoodgreeks.com, to find out where all the Greek entertainment is, and hellenicfestivals.org to find out where there is a Greek festival near you. It is the summer, and they are popping up all over the United States. Please do not let the summer go by without having at least a few souvlakia. That's the grilled chicken for all you non-Greeks. Also, Select Flex. We love that sponsor. What's Select Flex? It's an orthotic. What's an orthotic? They also call it an insert. What do you do with it? You put it in your shoe. It gives you the best support. These orthotics, state of the art. I'm going to tell you why they're different, because there is a geometric beam in the arch where you can make your arch firm, or extra firm, depending on what your needs are. I'm telling you right now, if you're pronate, if you're flat-footed, these are for you. Much better than some of those other ones over the counter. You know what I'm talking about, Dr. Schmoll's. Go to their website, selectflex.com. 30-second video shows you how it works. And for Karis Comedy Corner listeners, guess what? 25% discount if you type in the code FAMILY25, FAMILY25, because you, my listeners, I love, and you are like my family, except I don't fight with you as much. So I appreciate that. Go to their website, selectflex.com. Okay. I know we haven't had a guest in a really long time. I know basically every week it's been me and the Thoughts in My Head podcast. Hopefully you've been enjoying that. But I accrued a great guest, a man that I've met, I'm going to say 15 years ago or so, 16 years ago, when I used to do a lot on for Fox News Channel. There was a great show called Strategy Room that a lot of us were on, and it was fun. It was an internet show. It was very free flowing, but that's, I think, initially where I met him. And what's exciting for me is that he didn't just do the internet show. This man has been on Fox News Channel, tons of radio, cable, CNN, NBC. I mean, it's very interesting how every once in a while I'll turn around and I'm like, there he is. He has his own blog radio show that I urge you, if you have interest, curiosity, want to get educated on all things immigration, this is the man. So I am going to let him give you his illustrious resume, but I will introduce him as a retired INS agent. Excuse me, he didn't want me to use expert agent, who is so, one of the things that impresses me the most is that he went in front of the 9/11 Commission to testify. So without further ado, please welcome my guest and my friend, Michael Cutler. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that great introduction, Ellen. I retired as a senior special agent with the old INS. And you know what's remarkable, before I talk about my background, only because you need to know who you're listening to. Before you take advice, know who you're getting advice from. The talking heads on TV give me a conniption, because so many people come on with opinions that aren't based on anything but a brain spasm. And if we're supposed to listen to someone spewing a brain fart, then we've got a problem. And just a quick anecdote, you're a comedian and there's humor in everything. I've been on all the networks. Prior to by the Supreme Court decision, Citizens United, all the networks wanted to get information about immigration out there. Since all that money got pumped into politics, the level of corruption has gone through the roof. Campaign contributions, that's Orwellian for bribe, okay? Let's be honest about all of this. I was not allowed to accept a cup of coffee when I was on duty. I got a police medal from the government of Japan for working with them on a major narcotics investigation. Before I could take the medal home, my bosses had to make a determination that the materials that that medal was made out of were not worth more than $35. I kid you not. Somehow they figured out that it was worth about $30. So the medal sits on my bookcase here in my office in my home. And I wish the politicians had to adhere to the same sort of standard. But in any event, one day I was driving into one of the networks, MSNBC, CNN, whoever it was. I've done literally thousands of TV appearances. And the driver from Russia, after about 15 minutes, started laughing. And I said, "What's funny?" He said, "You're going on TV, aren't you?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I know you're an expert." I said, "How do you know I'm an expert?" He said, "Because 95% of the time when people sit in the back of my car and I'm bringing them into the studios, they work their phone like a crack addict looking for his connection to figure out what they're supposed to do when the cameras are on." He said, "You're sitting there looking like you're ready for a nap." I said, "Actually, I am. Can you wake me when we get through the battery tunnel?" But, his perception was really interesting. It's important that you listen to people who are worth listening to. And that doesn't mean that people with expertise aren't going to disagree with me. We will. And if you testify in a trial, and I've testified at many trials and many congressional hearings, I think altogether I've done something like 16 or 17 hearings in the House and Senate. I've testified before state legislative bodies around the country. Just to quickly go over my background, I started with the INS in 1971 as an immigration inspector assigned to Kennedy Airport. The way I explain it, that was the time I had my eye to the peephole on America's front door. And for those first 4 years, it was quite an education because I met people from all over the world. For one of those 4 years, I accepted an assignment to do the marriage interviews like you've seen in the movies, looking to uncover immigration fraud. An issue that undermines national security and an issue that the current administration could not care less about. It frightens me, to be honest with you. In 1975, I became what was then known as a criminal investigator, special agent, and I rotated through all the squads within the investigations branch and became frustrated that we could almost never get anyone prosecuted for the crime of unlawful reentry after deportation. When the politicians tell you violations of immigration law are administrative violations, they're civil violations, it's like jaywalking. No, it's not. It's one of the big lies. So let's explode that lie before I go on with my resume so I don't forget, because this is really critical. Immigration law involves two bodies of law. Yes, there are administrative solutions to illegal aliens. We deport them. Perhaps we strip them of any lawful status they acquired, either because they lied when they made the application, concealing material facts, or maybe they've committed felonies. So even if they have a green card, they lose that green card and we send them back to their home country. That's called, today they call it removal. It used to be called deportation. They changed the name so they could claim they were removing more people. Everything is a game and everything is about the numbers. It's a magic act. They're deceiving you with lies and nonsense. Both parties are guilty. It's not one party or the other. They are Republicrats, okay? There's a couple of exceptions, but this push for open borders has been going for a very long time, and we're paying a hell of a price for it now, okay? So understand that. And so the way that the whole system works is you have the administrative body of law where the resolution is deportation. Then we have an entire different set of laws that are criminal statutes, and just like any other crime, espionage, bank robbery, kidnapping, drugs, you name it, immigration has comparable laws where there are criminal penalties. The penalties there go all the way up to 25 years in jail and or a fine. Think about that. So when they say, oh, administrative violence, civil, oh, come on, this isn't serious. Bullshit. That's the technical word for that, okay? These are lies. And in fact, I'm very proud of the fact that when we couldn't get people prosecuted for coming back after they were deported, I took it on myself to go to then Senator Al D'Amato, Senator Pothole here in New York. And I said, we have a problem. He said, what's the problem? We can't get people prosecuted when they come back after we deport them. He said, why not? I said, well, the U.S. attorney says it's only a 2-year felony. It's hardly worth the effort. Why bother? Just deport them. So that was one of the problems. The other problem we had was that we would wait to try to deport aliens when they came out of jail after they served prison sentences for rape, arson, mayhem, guns, drugs. I said, why don't we hold deportation hearings in the jails? So we can get them ordered deported. By the time they are to be released, we could put their rear ends on an airplane and wave goodbye. And then the reentry law kicks in. If we could turn 2 years to 20 years for aliens who have serious criminal histories. And D'Amato seemed very interested. And he said to me, you know what? If you can get some of your colleagues to talk to my staff and substantiate what you're telling me, I'll get behind that effort because I think it's worthwhile. Well, it took about 6 months. I got over 30 of my colleagues, one way or the other, Shanghai, almost at gunpoint, but not quite, almost handcuffed. And some of them, of course, were very eager to help out. You know, it's the usual assortment. Am I going to get in trouble? You know, it's amazing. Tell them to go arrest a guy with a machine gun and they're grabbing the long guns and we're heading out the door. Talk to a senator? Are you crazy? What's wrong with you? I mean, think about that. But we did it. And believe it or not, we actually got the law changed. And I have to give credit to a gentleman by the name of Walter Connery. Walt had been the head of internal affairs for the New York City Police Department, retired, went to work for the old INS where I worked, Immigration and Naturalization Service, as the head of internal affairs in Washington, knocked heads with the idiots in Washington who didn't want to be told what they could or could not do. I can't begin to tell you. That's a story for another day. They gave him a choice, leave or become the head of investigations in New York City. He was from New York, so he came to New York. I worked for Walt, and he was a real gentleman. Not all of my bosses were. He was an attorney. He was a mentor to me. And unbeknownst to me and unbeknownst to him, we both had approached Al D'Amato with the same idea, make reentry a 20-year felony for criminals. He actually wrote up a legislative initiative. Turns out he gave it to D'Amato shortly after we concluded convincing his people we needed to change the law. The timing couldn't have been better. Talk about serendipity. We got the law changed, and I wound up taking a Dominican drug dealer into custody who was sitting in a jail in upstate New York. He lost his green card because of many convictions for drugs and firearms violations, spoke great English, and when I went to get him, he was as nasty and obnoxious and foul-mouthed as you might imagine. And he said to me, oh, my ride is here. I hope the limo is polished up. I'm going back to the DR so I could do the horizontal mambo with my favorite honeys on the beach. And I said, you jackass, you have a detour in your future. You're not done with our jails. We're going to put you up in a beautiful hotel that has bars on the windows. He told me I was a blanking liar. I said, let's see how it goes. We drove him right into federal court. We arraigned him. I went to his sentencing. He got hammered with 5 years in jail for reentry, and he cried like a little wimp. And I had the judge allow me to approach him, and the judge said, who are you? I said, I'm the case agent. He said, have at it. So they turned him around, and I said, hey, schmuck, make believe you're having a nice day. And he literally cried. Now, when you could make somebody who was that violent and that dangerous and that pernicious cry, I call that a good day. And it was a wonderful day. So we actually got the law changed. And for President Trump, believe it or not, that was the most frequently prosecuted felony for the entire Department of Justice. So I'm telling you the story because I want you to understand that when you hear this crap, oh, this is just a minor issue. No, it's not. And by the way, if you commit visa fraud in conjunction with terrorism, that's 25 years in jail. Okay? Think about that. Now, I don't know how many of you remember this. And by the way, just to finish my resume, so I was with all the squads of the investigations branch. We broke up alien smuggling rings because New York is one of the 50 border states. We are a nation of 50 border states. Forget the Mexican border. I mean, don't forget it. It's important. But any state that's on the northern or southern border, any state that has access to our 95,000 miles of coastline, any state that has an international airport are all border states. None of the 9/11 hijackers ran the Mexican border, okay? If the Mexican border had been airtight and they put up the deflector shield from the Starship Enterprise, 9/11 would have happened exactly the way it happened. Let's understand that. So I did that. I was the first immigration agent assigned to the Unified Intelligence Division of DEA. And then I was promoted in 1991 to the position of senior special agent and assigned to the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force. I had desks at the FBI, DEA, ATF. I worked with foreign governments. My very first fraud investigation back in 1976, I hate to think about how long ago that was. That accounts for my gray and white hair and missing hair back here. My wife calls it my pink yarmulke because I'm a Jew from Brooklyn. But in 19, if I lose my sense of humor, my mind can't be far behind, Ellen.
No, keep that. You have.
Well, I have a twisted mind. What can I tell you?
Well, look what you did for a living and continue to.
And that's how you have to. That's the only way to survive. It's a defense mechanism.
Because it's so. I'm sorry, just interrupt for a second. But, it's like I mean, I know you, so I've heard you speak. So for some of my listeners, of course, most of them probably is going to be the first time. The wealth of information that you have, the experiences that you have come and you have encountered. And I want everybody to know, because you usually say this, and I'm sure at some point you'll say it, but it's not for you being Republican or Democrat at all. It's not about politics. So if anybody's listening to this and they're like, there goes Ellen, she's on the right, it has nothing to do with that. And I say this all the time. It doesn't seem to resonate because it's not important anymore, but I am the product of immigrants. All my grandparents came here. They came through Ellis Island. They had to report. You had to get checked out. And yes, there were things that went on back then that that weren't right, that we know now about, turning away people that were sick and et cetera, et cetera.
Well, wait a moment. Turning away people who were sick was about preventing pandemics and epidemics. Let's remember that also.
I know. I actually have a personal story about, which I'm trying to write a play about my great grandmother, to tell you the truth. But it's about, this wasn't a physical illness. This was, not having progressed the way that they should. It's a longer story. But anyway, be that as it may, they came to this country for a better life, or they'd lost everything, whatever their situation was, and they reported back. They didn't take anything from this country. Everybody had God forbid you say you need to learn English. And my grandmother, my great grandmother, for the most part, spoke Greek, but she learned enough to understand English. My grandmother learned to speak English, had the heaviest accent ever. But, just to be able to get around, because there were no tests in Greek. There were no signs. There weren't anything. They assimilated. And this is the other thing I like to tell people. I'm not telling you not to assimilate. I love culture. This is what makes this country is on the fabric of all of the different cultures and the languages. And it's beautiful. But that's
it's a gorgeous mosaic, Ellen.
Right. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about I feel like the generosity that we have as a country, and that all my grandparents felt and appreciated, has completely been twisted. And now you're put into like somebody like now I'm white. I'm like, what? What is that?
Let me.
You know what I'm saying? And it's just
to go to your point. First of all,
we're like off the grid. It's like, how am I?
It's part of the game, Ellen, and I'll explain it to you. And I'll explain it, and I will explain it to you. First of all, you should know I'm a lifelong registered Democrat.
Yes, okay? I do know that, and now everybody knows that, right? Yes.
Yes, I have no problem with it because people say, "How can you be a Democrat? Look at Pelosi, look at Schumer. They're not Democrats. They've morphed into something ugly and dangerous." The Democrat Party used to be the party of hardworking blue-collar America. So to talk about my own family, I lost a lot of family to the Holocaust. Being a Jew, my grandmother was killed in Poland because of our religion. I was named for her. My mother was able to get out of Poland. She came to America legally, lived by herself in a rooming house because her father abandoned her, wonderful guy. So she wound up living by herself at age 13. Picture this, in a rooming house. Supported herself by working in a sweatshop making umbrellas for $3 a week back then. By the time she was in her 20s with a fourth grade education, she became the chief buyer for a dress company that during the Depression was so successful, her boss became one of Roosevelt's $1 a year men who was called to the White House regularly to try to figure strategies out to get the economy moving during the Depression. And he frequently pointed to my mother in her 20s with virtually no education as the reason he was able to be so successful, because of her incredible ability. That was my mom. My dad was born here. Most of his family was born in Russia, Romania, wherever the border was, given what year and so forth. His father brought their family here when he was 33 years old. The first order of business was to learn English. He used to take the Yiddish newspaper, The Forward, and compare yesterday's yesterday's forward with today's. I'm doing it backwards. The forward of today was yesterday's daily news. They would translate it and publish it. So that was his Rosetta Stone. And the first day they were eligible to become citizens, he didn't walk to the courthouse, he ran. And he was a fiery character. I'm told that by the people who knew him and knew me, that I was very much like him. My middle name is William, named from my grandpa Willie, my father's father. He was all about justice. He was a Cossack in the Russian army. He was a marksman, and he was a boxer. Then he had a miserable temper. And one day my father told me the story. He was a young kid, and they're living in a tenement, and he hears this riot in the backyard, the tumult. And he looks out the window, and there's my grandfather sitting on the neighbor's chest using his face for a speed bag. The guy's teeth are all over the courtyard in the backyard. One of his eyes is closed, and it's the size of a golf ball. And they pull him off him. And in those days, you didn't get arrested unless they pressed charges, and the other guy was too embarrassed to press charges. And they said, Willie, what the hell did you do? He said, what do you mean, what did I do? That son of a bitch called me a crazy Russian. He said, I could deal with being called crazy, but God damn it, I'm an American. True story. It was a very different era.
Right.
And the Democrat Party looked out for blue collar workers. My dad was a tradesman. And I will tell you, if you give me a choice between having dinner with a bunch of hard hats who actually build something or a bunch of thieving bankers, forgive the redundancy, I'll go with the hard hats. I wanted to be an engineer. I lost my parents to cancer within a year of each other when I was in college. So I've been on my own since I was a kid. And it's about working hard. When I hear about white privilege, my head wants to explode. It's American privilege. The fact that you live in a country where you can dream as big as you want and attain whatever you want, except now they're making it far more difficult by importing an army of foreign workers to displace Americans. And the Democrats used to fight it, and the Republicans used to push it. It was Reagan who gave us the first amnesty. It was Reagan who gave us the visa waiver program. It was Reagan and George Herbert Walker Bush who gave us the diversity visa. Believe it or not, Bernie Sanders in 2006 stood with the AFL-CIO and said, anybody who hires illegal aliens should be put in jail. You're destroying jobs and wages for Americans. Everyone talks about Cesar Chavez. He started the farm workers union. Oh, he was in favor of the immigrants. No, he wasn't. He actually suggested violence against illegal aliens because they were displacing American migrants. So when I hear them use the term migrant on Fox News or anywhere else, I turn purple. We're talking about aliens. And the reason the term alien has been expunged from the conversation is nothing short of Orwellian. I was going to be an engineer originally. Two of my boys are engineers. I wanted to design spacecraft. They're mechanical engineers doing really great. By the way, my youngest son has autism. Because of early intervention, guess what? He had a full scholarship to City College, and he's working very successfully. He's in his mid-20s. I can't tell you. I call him my mountain climber. Nothing stops him. Today, money for those programs is being diverted to English as a second language, destroying opportunities for American children. My stepson, my second oldest, teaches learning disabled young kids, and they don't have the resources they need. Understand the problems that we're facing. And this is not an anti-immigrant position. And that's what you hear. Pro-immigrant, anti-immigrant. No, it's pro-immigration enforcement and immigration anarchy. We admit more than 1 million lawful immigrants every year. That's more than the rest of the world combined. But there's a limit. If you're in a lifeboat and it's overloaded, I don't care if you're in frigid, shark-infested waters and there are people thrashing about. I feel bad for them. But we all know that if you let everybody in the water onto the lifeboat, everyone's going down. The harsh reality is that just like when my parents had cancer and the doctor said, sorry, Mr. Cutler, there's nothing we can do. Sometimes there's nothing we can do much as we want to, okay? And we have to understand realism. What upsets me is when conservatives talk about the bleeding heart liberal. What's wrong with you? You mean it's a negative to be compassionate? Are you that stupid or that selfish? Which is it? See, think of the words that we hear in these ridiculous debates and arguments. He's a bleeding heart. I'm a bleeding heart. I'm a bleeding heart, but I believe charity starts at home. And by the way, that's not because of race, because America is probably racially, ethnically, the most diverse country on the planet.
Oh, okay, so I'm sorry. So let me just
Am I getting anything wrong here, Ellen?
No. So to your point, I don't know why it's giving this message. To your point, this is, I find, so frustrating and such a lie and such propaganda and brainwashing, and they're doing it to the younger generation as well.
Yeah.
That we're all a bunch of racists. We don't know what we're talking about. Again, with I can't I keep going back to the white privilege. I can't listen to it anymore. It's like my grandfather was a waiter. My grandmother was a seamstress. She worked in a factory.
Yes.
I mean, proud people. Don't get me wrong. But the Brinks truck.
But you know what worries me about this?
My husband and I work our asses off. Nobody, there's no Brinks truck. And the thing is, Michael, too, some of these people that are talking about it are privileged. The Nancy Pelosi's of the world.
You're missing the point. You're missing why this is being done and what scares the bejesus out of me. My first wife tragically died of cancer when she was 33. Our son was 22 months old. He wound up as the president of the student government at City College. He has a brilliant career. His mom was a brilliant woman. She was a computer programmer, MBA in computer science, Phi Beta Kappa graduate. Those people are being fired now. And I want to get to that point also. That's why I'm mentioning her background. Her parents were in the Holocaust. Her mother was in a concentration camp. Her father's brother was killed because he was out past curfew. He hid in holes in the ground in the forest of Poland, evading the Nazis. And some of the Poles who were decent would leave their barns slightly open, and that was a signal that they could go in and find food. They would leave food for them, okay? And they did it that way so they could deny they were helping the Jews, because they would have been machine gunned. These people, God bless them, terrible situation. And I said to my mother-in-law, how in the world did this happen? She said, well, we kept saying it can't get worse. And how did it start? It started by convincing the Germans that if it wasn't for the Jews, they would have everything they want. When you take one segment of your society and scapegoat them with the other segment, bad things happen. That's how the Holocaust happened. Interesting story. I'm a science guy. I started teaching myself astronomy in the 3rd grade. I was going to be an aerospace engineer. I had the privilege of meeting a bunch of our astronauts along the way. I went down to the Cape. I saw the last moon launch. Einstein, of course, had an incomparable intellect. And everyone knew that Einstein had to flee Germany during the Second World War because he was a Jew. Not good to be in Germany if you were a Jew. Well, it's worse than that. We're told follow the science. Well, I believe in following the science, but science is a process. Science is the quest for knowledge. It's not like you take a book off the shelf that says science and you say, oh, it's all here. Nothing is all here. Most everything you hear about has the word theory afterward, right? Big Bang theory, right? Why? Because we're not sure. We weren't there. I don't know anybody who was there. Maybe Pelosi's almost old enough to have been there, but maybe not quite. But all kidding aside. So we don't know what we don't know. But Einstein came up with his theories on relativity. And if you've been following science at all today with modern technology, the physicists of today have been able to validate almost every one of his elements of both his general and specific theories on relativity. But back then in Germany, the Nazis got 2 scientists, 2 physicists who had gotten the Nobel Prize for physics to get in front of the crowds at the universities and say that Einstein was practicing Jewish science and was a threat to the fatherland.
Oh my God.
And the riots went berserko. They tried to get at him. He was convinced they were going to kill him. This happened repeatedly. Some of his people, his colleagues, were beaten and threatened and stabbed and all sorts of things. He said, the hell with this, I'm getting out of Dodge. So when you hear follow the science, my question is, whose science? You see, but it started by doing what? Convincing the Germans that the Jews had stolen their success from them. Doesn't it sound a little bit like white privilege to you?
And so Michael, why do
You
you
see the
think,
parallel?
no, I totally see the parallel. So why do you think, what's the agenda? Okay, so from where I sit, from my little, compared to you, it's little knowledge, but from what I see, and I realize that news has a way of spinning and this and that, but
All right, so here's the story.
Apparently, people are coming in. There seems to be no accountability. There's people being dropped off at airports now. And by the way, I remember when, and I don't know which mayor it was or who did it, but when New York City became a sanctuary city, I was just like, what?
Even Koch did it, and I loved Ed Koch, but it started with Koch, it started with Dinkins. And so understand the problem, okay? First of all, when Jimmy Carter started this nonsense that we cannot use the word alien to describe aliens, the word alien is a legal term, and it's recognized in international law. The term alien has a definition. And every body of federal law and state law also have definitions. You can't arrest someone and charge them with possession of a firearm if you don't define what a firearm is, right? So every section of law has definitions. Alien is defined, and we had to commit this to memory. Back when I was hired on, we went to Border Patrol Academy. They drove the agency, which I think was a mistake. Border Patrol is only a small part of immigration, okay? And we're going to get to that quickly in a couple of minutes, but I just want you to think. We had to memorize the definitions down to punctuation. And if you reverse two words but didn't change the meaning, you may as well have left the question blank. It was that much hammered into your head because when you're out on the street, you needed to have guidance as to how do I deal with the situation. What guides you? The law. We're law enforcement officers. We weren't the Gestapo. And how many times have I heard people compare immigration to the Gestapo, which as a Jew, let me tell you, lights my candle, really does.
Right.
So the term alien simply means any person, not a citizen or national of the United States. Where's the insult? It doesn't say you're ugly, you're immoral, you smell bad. It's like me saying, Ellen, you're a good friend, but you're not a part of my family, so you're not my relative.
Right.
If you knew my family, it's a good thing, but that's another day. But you understand my point, yes? So all we're saying is you are somebody in this country who does not have citizenship. Period, full stop. What's the problem? There is no problem. But then again, there is a problem. The problem is it provides clarity to the discussion. And when you're a con artist, you don't want clarity. This is a magic act. Most Americans, if they're asked the questions properly, and look how the pollsters always twist things when they take polls. They should sit on those polls and twist in the wind, okay? It's how you ask the question. Most Americans, if you can really sit down with them, will tell you, I believe in a strong border so that we know who's coming in. We need to be generous, but we need to take care of Americans first and so forth. So how is it that politicians don't want to do what would have been common sense? Because they've been bribed. The immigration system is not a failed system. Everyone says the immigration system is broken. I'm sorry.
Bribed by who?
Well, campaign contributions. Look at the special interest groups. Let me ask you a couple of quick questions. Number one, what's so bad about the border wall? You know, Pelosi called it the wall of hate, and it's about racism. Do you know that the border wall, and I'm going to say it twice because I want everyone listening to know that you didn't mishear me. I got it right the first time. The border wall was never intended to stop the entry of a single solitary person into the United States, period, full stop. So why is it a wall of hate? The border wall is not designed to stop anybody from entering. All the border wall does is funnel everybody and all commerce through a port of entry. I like to use analogies, okay? Think of the border wall as the velvet rope at the bank that guides customers to the next available teller, so it's an orderly process. Think of the border wall as the cattle runs that we go through at the airport to get to the next available TSA agent, which raises a question. Would you be willing to get on an airplane if you saw people sneaking past TSA?
Right. No, of course not. Of course.
Why are we then being forced to live among millions of people who snuck past the equivalent? Because that's what we do at ports of entry. My final analogy, you go to the baseball park, you go to a football stadium. Yes or no? Do you just saunter across the field or do you go through a gate?
I think so.
Nope. The gate is the equivalent
It's not
of a
broken.
port. You've been believing the pablum they've been spoon feeding us. The immigration system has morphed into a system that's designed to protect public health, public safety, national security, and the jobs and wages of Americans. All right. By the way, if you don't believe me, and I'll put in a shameless plug, I write a lot for Front Page Magazine, David Horowitz Freedom Center. I've been affiliated with them since 2014. It's my privilege and honor to write for them. I have a new article out right now. In fact, I'll mention it towards the end, but I hope you check out my articles. But I always like to put links in to verify what I'm telling you. It's the equivalent of footnotes, but better, because you click on it and there's the section of law, or there's a speech that some thieving politician. I did it again. This redundancy has to stop. Okay, thieving politician is redundant, isn't it?
Yes.
So right. I mean, think about it. So what they do is they have an agenda. They know, as we were talking about the polls, that the average American wants a secure border. The people that don't want a secure border, pay them to not give you a secure border. Now, if they tell you they're not going to secure the border, you're not going to vote for them. So that creates a problem. This is a magic act. I'm sure you've seen the magician who cuts the lovely assistant in half. Now, we all know that if he cuts her in half, he's going to go to jail. No one's ever going to work for him again. And maybe he hoped to get lucky that night. Okay. So the trick is to create an elaborate illusion that he cut her in half. And at the end of the show, she jumps up on stage and not a hair on her head has been harmed. And everyone's been entertained and everybody claps like a bunch of trained seals, right? Okay. Everyone knows what the average American expects of the government. You can't protect the country if you can't protect against those people who would come in and do harm to you. There was a report that was called the 9/11 Commission Staff Report on Terrorist Travel. This report was in addition to the 9/11 report, and it's an official report. It's important to make that point. This wasn't like some memoir from some guy who couldn't sleep at night and thought he could make a couple bucks. This report was published by the government printing office, and the authors were the federal agents, a number of whom I knew quite well, and the attorneys who worked for the 9/11 Commission. And it was called 9/11 and Terrorist Travel. It was a monograph. The very first paragraph of the preface of this report, which laid out the purpose for the report, states the following. It is perhaps obvious to state that terrorists cannot plan and carry out attacks in the United States if they are unable to enter the country. Yet prior to September 11, while there were efforts to enhance border security, no agency of the U.S. government thought of border security as a tool in the counterterrorism arsenal. By the way, if you can't figure that one out, you shouldn't be allowed to walk someone's dog, let alone run a federal agency. I mean, think about that, right? But anyway, it says no one thought of it as a tool in the counterterrorism arsenal. Indeed, even after 19 hijackers demonstrated the relative ease of obtaining a U.S. visa and gaining admission into the United States, border security still is not considered a cornerstone of national security policy. We believe, for reasons that we discussed in the following pages, that it must be made one. And they go through issue after issue after issue. And shortly after 9/11, I was asked by none other than Sheila Jackson Lee to testify as to how two of the dead terrorists, if you folks can think back to March of 2002, Mohammed Atta, the ringleader, and Marwan al-Shehhi, they were in the two cockpits of the two airplanes that crashed into the towers, okay? To everyone's horror, exactly 6 months to the day of the anniversary of the attack, it was discovered that the government had given them authorization to attend, of all things, flight school. Now, the whole world knew they were dead, knew they were terrorists, and it was Sheila Jackson Lee in conjunction with Jim Sensenbrenner who said, can you come and testify about this whole situation? I was home with an injured leg. I went and testified. And the incredible part of it is that if you watch the hearing, and it's part of the permanent record at C-SPAN, all the indignant members of Congress, all the promises and all the pounding of the podium, just about none of the promises were kept. All right. So when you see the open border, when they keep talking about the hundreds of thousands, right? They're all, I just want you to think about the number 19. 19. You know why 19 is a special number, boys and girls? Because 19 hijackers, barely out of their teens, with not much in the way of real specific training, killed more people than we lost to the entire Japanese fleet at Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. Let that sink in. and the death count continues. And so we are allowing people in with no clue as to who they are. And we're told, well, they want political asylum. Why are we doing this? Again, immigration is now a delivery system. It's no longer if you go to Title 8, United States Code Section 1182, it categorizes all the people that we're supposed to keep out. Not a word there about race, religion, ethnicity. If there was, Ellen, I couldn't have enforced those laws for 30 seconds, let alone 30 years. Aliens with dangerous communicable diseases, aliens with mental illness, aliens who are terrorists and spies and criminals and convicted felons and fugitives from justice, aliens who, if they worked, would displace American workers or drive down the wages. That's what we're talking about. What is unreasonable about that? Protecting the jobs and wages of Americans, protecting us from criminals. So you have a wide open border, and they say, well, they want political asylum. Political asylum is a very specific concept. Understand that. You can't get political asylum because you live in poverty. Sorry, economic asylum is not political asylum.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah. I actually got a little educated on this over the weekend.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's that you have to have a credible fear that can be verified that because of race, religion, ethnicity, political orientation, and in this day and age, sexual orientation, you would face persecution or worse if you were forced to go back to your home country. So once you flee from your country, that's why Trump very smartly did the third country rule. They're in Mexico. What does that have to do with your fears in Guatemala or El Salvador? Now, by the way, it's not reasonable to make them wait in another country. I mentioned my in-laws. Do you know my in-laws basically had to wait in Italy? They had a wait in Italy policy. You know how long they were there? Till more than 3 years after the end of the Second World War, waiting to be vetted. In fact, my late wife, may she rest in peace, her brother was born in the Italian refugee camp. Think about that. And they were happy to come here. And now you have a caravan, they called it. It sounds like the circus has come to town. The only circus that comes to town is when Congress convenes. I really want to hear calliope music the next time these bastards walk into that grand hall of theirs. Can you just see it?
I'm sorry. I want to fast forward because we can do a day with you. We could do.
Well, we should probably do a couple of programs if you want, because I want your audience to understand the issue the way they need.
So, but I want to get to what's going on now. This whole thing with Title 42.
Yeah. All right. So let's do that. Let's do that. All right.
It's such a hot button issue. We know we've got elections coming up in November. It's going to be, certainly one of the main topics. What's the truth, Michael Cutler? What is actually happening? Are people getting dropped off at LaGuardia?
Oh, absolutely. This is the biggest human trafficking operation in the history of the United States. If you or I did it, I guarantee you the agents would be at your door in the middle of it. Well, it wouldn't be the middle of the night. It would be 6 o'clock in the morning because that's when we execute warrants. And you'd be taken into custody, and rightfully so. Look, what they're doing, and by the way, this is supposed to be a government of the people, by the people, for the people. I held a top secret clearance. I had access to material that, if it was divulged, would undermine national security. That makes sense. Why are they doing this in the dead of night? This isn't about access to information that would undermine national security. It's that they themselves are undermining national security, and they don't want Americans to know it. They are operating in the dead of night because this is a criminal operation. And I wrote an article for Front Page Magazine, very important article. I also wrote an article for an organization that's actually ending at the end of the month, U.S. Incorporated. Do you realize, and the title of my article was that Mayorkas is no longer the guardian of the United States, but its innkeeper. All these NGOs, and that's this business about the delivery system. What the system delivers is an unlimited supply of cheap, exploitable labor. And it's not just the illegals, it's the high-tech workers. Greenspan said the solution to wage inequality, make American programmers like my late first wife compete with foreign workers so we could cut their wages. They're making far too much money. He said, if you could make them compete, we could get rid of that wage premium, and then you greatly reduce wage inequality between Americans with skills and those with lesser skills. This is a decision to destroy the middle class. And he had the chutzpah to refer to high-tech workers as the privileged elite. And nobody wants to talk about it, including the Republicans. I had a major argument with Bob Goodlatte, the Republican chairman of the House Judiciary Committee when he was still the chairman, because he's an immigration lawyer. And he specialized in H-1B visas. And during the argument, he said, my son knows lots about immigration. In fact, he'd love to see tens of thousands of brilliant Indians come to America. I said, and what are the Americans, chopped liver? And he ended the discussion. Now, I looked up Bobby Goodlatte. Bobby Goodlatte got his start with Zuckerberg at Facebook. Do I have to say more? He's very wealthy, and he's only probably in his 30s. Goodlatte made millions as an immigration lawyer, and he's now once again an immigration lawyer. So the system delivers an unlimited supply of cheap labor, foreign tourists, foreign students, and clients for immigration law firms, and now clients for the NGOs. And it was interesting.
NGO is what? NGO is what?
Non-government organizations, so-called nonprofits, Orwellian, nonprofit. I don't think so. So anyway, the interesting story is that they gave the government, the Biden administration gave a $500+ million contract to an outfit with no experience in taking care of people under these circumstances. Turned out, according to the Office of Inspector General, they were paid something on the order of $17 million for rooms that were never used. And you say, well, how do you do a non-bid? If I damaged my government car, I had to go to a minimum of 3 body shops to find out what a new bumper costs, right? Here they said, here's $500 million. You don't have to compete. It turned out that a guy who had worked for the Biden administration for immigration and then went on to work for them in the transition team, quit the government, went to work for that company, whereupon they got the contract. So if you let more in, they're going to need to have more money spent on what? The NGOs, the so-called nonprofits. And with this kind of shady dealings where you have people jumping over to work there, do you see a problem? Do you see a conflict of interest? There's another problem. Conservatives are very narrow-minded. So are the conservatives and the liberals. They all have a narrative and they follow the narrative. It's a script, the same stupid arguments. Has anyone ever said to you or said to Nancy Pelosi, why would you be against a border wall? It doesn't stop people from entering. It just makes sure that we know who's coming in. That's all it's there for. Could you go to Nancy's house and climb through a bedroom window without her calling the police? You want to go to visit Nancy, you have to knock on the front door so we know that who's coming in. That's all we're asking for. But it gets far worse than that. I believe that what the Democrats want is to crash the economy. Why? Because if you crash the economy, people will need subsidies from the government so they could have luxuries, like turn the lights on at night when they come home, buy a hamburger here and there, right? Are the Republicans going to give you any handouts? No. Which party is the party of the handout? It's the Democrat Party. I think they did the math and they said, you know what? If we could crash the economy, if we could destroy opportunities and destroy the middle class, everyone's going to have to come to the government to survive. And once that happens,
let's just take a step back on another topic, though. Look what's going on with oil. Under the guise of green energy, global warming, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you, not only because I don't want to run out of time. Forgive me. I'm picking up on what you're saying.
Yeah.
I wrote an article, and I said that before we have any massive immigration bills, we should require an environmental impact study. There is a massive drought in the West right now, not enough water. I did a little bit of research. Do you know the average person needs a minimum of 100 gallons of water per day per person? For sanitary reasons, flushing the toilet, taking a shower, preparing food. And that doesn't include the water that's needed to irrigate the land to grow the crops that the people need. Every person here has an environmental footprint. They need water, they need sewage, they need electricity, they need food, they need housing, they need clothing. They need transportation and infrastructure. They need healthcare. They need schools if they're children. When they said there's 11 million, and Yale University in 2018 said, no. What do you mean there's 11? There's probably more than double that. Well, I think even that number is low. And now with the caravans, but the number no one talks about. Reagan said we would legalize 1 million during his administration. It turned into 3.5 million. But you know what they never talked about? Every alien who gets legalized has an immediate and absolute right to bring in every single one of their minor children and spouses. So if on average, each alien who gets legalized brings in 4 kids, which is a wildly optimistic number, it could be 10, it could be 15. And if you're not looking to see if they're lying, who knows? The sky's the limit. But let's stick with 4 because I feel optimistic today. Clint Eastwood said, do you feel lucky? Maybe I feel lucky today. All right. Let's say we legalize 25 million aliens. By the way, no interviews, no field investigations, and keep thinking about that number 19 because they all committed immigration fraud. Okay, 19, look what happened. 25 million. If on average they bring in 4 kids each, how many kids are coming? 100 million. And under the law, they immediately have to be enrolled in schools. The Congressional Budget Office did a study around 2006 or 2007 that said it costs 20 to 40% more to educate children who are not English proficient. So in addition to having to provide teachers, classrooms, and school buildings for 100 million, you're going to have to address the fact that most won't speak English. Okay, now stop and think about that. And no one wants to talk about it. When I've approached producers at conservative programming, and I told them that, they said, oh my God, we got to get this on the air. And 3 days later, nobody called, and I called them and they weren't available. Nobody wants you to understand what we're looking at is a human tsunami. This is not an anti-immigrant position. This is a survival position because we cannot invite 100 million immigrant children to America. If you were going to throw a party and you say, gee whiz, I've got a list of 38 people, but I only have the budget so that we can invite 12. It's not that you hate the people you cross off the list. It's that you understand you have limited resources and your house has only so many chairs, okay? But now if you dare suggest, and they always say, we have to fix the system. How? Comprehensive immigration reform. I wrote an op-ed for the Washington Times back in 2006 because I had testified before a bunch of hearings. And because my whole deal was the space program, that was my dream, I compared the hearings to the countdown for the launch of Space Shuttle Challenger. The reason for the countdown was for the experts to weigh in as to whether they should go forward with the launch. The reason for the hearings, the experts should weigh in whether they should go forward with legislation. And I said, if you look at it in totality, the term comprehensive immigration reform is a lie. I came up with a more descriptive name. Jeff Sessions liked it so much, he quoted me with attribution during 3 days of floor debate about comprehensive reform, because I called it the Terrorist Assistance and Facilitation Act. And the bill was defeated, and he sent me a certificate. I don't know if you could see the certificate on my wall. That's from Jeff Sessions when he was a senator, thanking me and saying that it was his belief that he was able to use my words effectively to convince enough of his colleagues to vote down dangerous legislation. Now I've given it a second new name. I call it the Overwhelm America Act. So when they tell you we need comprehensive reform, no, we need comprehensive immigration law enforcement. It's like the business with the guns. I've taken a lot of guns off the street from some very dangerous people. I've arrested murderers and terrorists. In 1976, I started saying this. My first fraud case caused me to trip over a terror plot in Israel. We prevented the bombing of an oil refinery. That cemented in my mind the nexus between immigration and terrorism. In fact, I was told that I was the only American law enforcement official who was actually allowed to walk through the Israeli consulate in New York without an escort and with my firearm, because we did a lot of great work together. I actually sent a guy home in the United States to stand trial for murder in Israel. So we did a lot of great stuff, and the Israelis did phenomenal work helping us every step of the way. It was an amazing relationship. So this international nature of the problem is the deal. So it's not about passing laws, it's about having the resources. I have issues with the magazines being too big. If you're there trying to defend yourself in a violent confrontation, you don't want to run out of bullets before the threat is over, okay? And law-abiding people follow the law. That's why we call them law-abiding. Criminals don't. So if you restrict law-abiding people and the criminals don't play by the same rules, who's going to win?
Right.
Think about it. Right. You want to do these things? I'm with you. Then make sure the laws are enforced. Don't just tell me you want a red flag law. Put cops on the beat, support their efforts, put agents on the street. There's a law that says if you're an illegal alien found in possession of a firearm or even ammunition, you're looking at 10 years in jail. Why wouldn't you want to do that?
And does that happen? Does that happen?
Oh, I've arrested people and charged them with firearms.
No. Now, does it happen?
Now? No, they're not doing it at all. They don't care. They've told people that if you commit immigration fraud, even though the 9/11 Commission said that this was the key method of entry and embedding for the terrorists, Mayorkas said I don't care if you lie on the application. You're an American. You're entitled to be protected. Really?
And
But if
what
you
is
file a
it?
tax return, they want to hire an army of IRS agents to make sure you didn't make a mistake on your taxes.
What it's all about big government. The government's just, and you know what? It was getting bigger under Bush as well. I mean, this has been going on. It's been growing for a long time.
Because the
particular
bureaucracies want
administration-
to grow empires, because the more the empire grows, the more money they make, because they need to be a higher grade level because they have more people under them.
Politicians had become elitists. They think it's a kingdom. They work for us. That's completely gone out the window. They're all on TV.
Let me ask you a
They're all
question.
celebrities.
Well,
They're
listen.
all writing books. They all have documentaries. It's
Ellen,
bullshit.
Washington is Hollywood for ugly people, okay? Right?
I love that expression. That's so funny. I love that.
Now, do you remember when the automakers went to Washington and they were looking for a handout to be bailed out? And if you remember, I think it was Nancy Pelosi who went after one of these CEOs, and the guy had zero balls. See, my dad was a construction worker, and I know that everyone got upset with Trump, and I have my issues with Trump. I thought he should have treated Sessions differently. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
For me, Donald Trump was an ejection seat in a fighter plane. Nobody wants to hit the silk, but what's your alternative? When the plane is going down in flames, you go for the option, right? But understand that he represented the average American worker, and that's why they went nuts. And it's both parties, because suddenly he said, let's put Americans first. It's like Ted Cruz. In order for America to lead, we have to bring in the world's best and brightest. We almost had a fist fight. He actually pushed me one day. We both spoke at an event in Washington. And I said to him, Senator, my name is Mike Cutler. He said, I know who you are, Mr. Cutler. I've seen you so many times. How can I help you? And I gave him my business card. And I said, I agree, we've got to secure the Mexican border, but there's far more to the system. Now, this nonsense about bringing in the world's best and brightest, I said, I'm from Brooklyn, and where I come from, we have a term for the world's best and brightest. We call them Americans. His whole demeanor changed. He shoved me. He said, there are people standing at the gate. We were outside in the park across from the White House. He said, you're in my way. And he shoved me, and it almost got nasty. Why? Because what I said to him went against what he wanted, because his wife is with the Council on Foreign Relations. They were part of a task force to take down the borders that separate and protect the United States from both Mexico and Canada. I had an argument with a witness at a hearing.
Wait, I'm sorry. Hang on a second. Just go back to Ted Cruz. So Ted Cruz was for bringing in immigrants, or was
not immigrants, high-tech workers.
Uh-huh.
Why? You know, I'm old enough to remember when Sputnik was launched, okay? I was 9 years old, and I was home with a bad cold. It was Friday night. I was watching The Life of Riley, and they broke in with a commercial. I remember it like yesterday. I remember what my pajamas looked like, because it was one of those moments you don't forget. Because I started teaching myself astronomy in third grade. Now I was in fifth grade, so I was all in. And I thought this was great. And my father said, Mike, don't get all excited. They're our enemies, the Russians. You know, this isn't good. So on Monday, because President Eisenhower went on the air and said, we're going to teach American kids math and science so that we can continue to lead the world. And by Monday or Tuesday, my teachers had me set up a corner in my classroom called the Science Corner. My dad went with me to the green grocer. We got some orange crates. He hammered them together. I painted them, and I hung a sign handwritten that said Science Corner. And Thursdays for 1 hour, and they brought 2 or 3 other classes into the room. We doubled and tripled up, and I spoke about astronomy. I spoke how jet engines work. And then within a few months, they trained and certified some actual science teachers. And so my stint as the guest lecturer went away, but that was what was done. We're going to make sure that American kids are up to speed. Corporations understood that principle. That's why you had the Westinghouse Science Awards, why you had GE College Bowl, because corporations looked at American kids as their future employees. They didn't want dunderheads. They wanted the best. How do you get the best? You give them the education. They don't want American workers, folks. They want people from India who are not nearly as capable, not nearly as talented, not nearly as devoted, but they're cheap. And in fact, there's a book out now about Jack Welch. I could go on forever. And my son spotted the article. He said, Dad, you got to read it, because most people don't know what the 10% rule is. Jack Welch came up with it, and everybody followed because they're idiots, right? Bad ideas propagate quickly. Under the 10% rule, corporate executives should promote the top 10% performers and fire the bottom 10%. Every year you need to evaluate them and be merciless. Okay, if I work with you, am I going to help you, Ellen? Because now you're not my collaborator, you're my competitor.
Right.
So companies went down the tubes over this stupidity. Profit, profit, profit. Yes, I'm a capitalist. We are supposed to turn a profit. I get that. That's fine. And, build a better mousetrap. The world will be the path to your door. But there's got to be a moral element. I remember being on an airplane with a young woman who was young enough to be my daughter, very well dressed, telling me, this is 15 years ago, China is our trade partner. I said, China is our adversary, and one day it's going to come home to bite us. You're crazy. That's old school. You don't understand. She was very patronizing. And I said, I hope you remember the conversation, because one day the president of the United States, whoever will be sitting in the Oval Office, is going to get a phone call. We're going into Taiwan tomorrow. Say what you want. We don't care. Interfere. We will call in the note. We will nationalize your factories, and then we'll decide whether to deport your workers back to America or put them in jail and they can rot. We are going to control Taiwan, and you better not get in the way. And she said, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. How crazy am I? You see, if you look beyond tomorrow, but corporations can't think beyond the next earnings statement. Politicians can't think beyond the next election. China is looking generations into the future. Iran is looking generations into the future. And schmucky Americans are looking to say, well, what do we say tomorrow when the stock market opens? If that's as far down the road as you can look, you will fail. You can't drive your car safely by just looking at the bumper of the car in front of you. You need to look down the road and see that the bridge is out and cars are driving into the water. We're not bothering to look that far down the road.
Just to go back for 2 seconds with what I was saying, and then I want to wrap up and get again, your sort of vision of what you think is what's happening and where we're going. But it's the same thing now with energy. We know that they shut the spigots off. We know that we have resources in this country. Gas with under Trump, and again, I'm not being political. It's just a fact, was $1.80 or whatever. Now we're looking $6, $7, $8, and with the problem with
wait till you try to heat your homes during the winter time, because number 2 heating oil is basically diesel fuel.
Right. And I'm focused on it because everything trickles down to everything else. So now the avocados that I used to buy that were $5 a bag are now $11 a bag. And I'm not exaggerating.
And that's controlled by the drug cartels now, by the way.
My whole point is, we're hearing about electric cars and this, there's no charging stations. The cars are
we don't have the capacity. My son is involved with that. My oldest son is involved with that.
I'm nuts when I hear this. I can't.
But here's the thing. First of all, and we should do another, I love doing this with you. I don't believe that climate change is being caused by people. The sun drives the climate. Our position in its orbit around the sun varies. We have different levels of cosmic ray. There are so many variables that impact climate. But again, this is about a con game. This is about money. This is about power. This is about taking America down, because we stand between tyranny and the rest of the world. You see, understand that. Our enemies are licking their chops. That's why, if you notice, Betsy DeVos, when she was Secretary of Education under Trump, uncovered, I think it was $6 or $8 billion in money that was sent to our schools by China, Saudi Arabia, and other countries that are not our friends. Why are we allowing that? They were able to then alter the curriculum. They were then able to bring in their students that we educated. They were then able to also bring in their professors to indoctrinate American children in the United States and undermine us. Just like Tokyo Rose during the Second World War, demoralizing the troops. Think about that. And now, by the way, in New York, you probably know there are subway ads telling people how to use fentanyl safely.
Oh my God.
I just wrote about this. Here's the article. Here's my article.
Yeah, tell us. We didn't even touch upon that.
It's Front Page Magazine. Sanctuary cities now provide sanctuary for deadly illegal drugs. The New York City Health Department shows how to use them safely. And I want to give you a quick thought about sanctuary cities. Please. Driver's licenses for illegal aliens? Really? Almost every terror attack around the world involves motor vehicles, not airplanes. You have barriers against car bombs and truck bombs, right? You've seen them everywhere.
Yes.
But we have no idea who's driving the vehicles. And you could take a New York license or a California or an Illinois license, go to any other state, rent a car, and carry out an attack. Why? think about what we're doing. Well, they've got to be able to get to work. No, they're taking jobs they shouldn't have. And I testified before the New York State legislature. And I have to tell you this because it's a little bit humorous because I have a twisted brain. And with all the sad, terrible news, I think maybe a little humor would be helpful. So the two big arguments is they're going to drive safely if they have a license. I'd like to know how, but they never tell you that.
Correct.
And they're going to drive anyway. So in other words, we write laws, but we don't care if people don't abide by the laws that we write. So why are you bothering, right? I built this beautiful car. I don't care if you crash it against the bridge abutment. Why would I care? So what that I worked on it for how many years, right? Bullshit. So my argument was very simple. I said, first of all, I hate the word anyway. Criminals commit crimes anyway. We put them in jail. Well, we used to. And if you think that you're going to solve the problem by giving licenses to people who shouldn't be driving, maybe we ought to be giving carry permits to criminals who are going to carry anyway. Because by your reasoning, by giving them the permit and giving them training, we could improve their accuracy. If we improve their accuracy, they would be much less likely to hit an innocent bystander in the event of a shootout. Maybe we could even get them to use trigger locks between crimes. Do you realize how much safer we could make New York by giving criminals carry permits? And the Democrats got up and walked out of the hearing. I was supposed to get a video of the hearing. It disappeared along with Hillary's email. Okay? But think about that. Isn't that the same exact reasoning? They're going to carry anyway, so let's give them a permit. Now it's legal. No, you don't solve something being illegal by legalizing it. You impose punishments for people that violate the law.
We've lost it. We've lost it.
Where am I getting this wrong, Ellen?
Look what's going on. Look at just even in this city, the looting, this, that they know who.
But why wouldn't you? Because there's no punishment. There's no deter. If you have children, you don't say to your kid, if you don't do your homework, I'll get you an ice cream sundae and take you to the movie of your choice, right?
Yes.
But isn't that what we're doing? Violate the law and we stand with you. So, by the way, there's another point I made at one of my early hearings. You get one opportunity for a first impression. The first set of laws that aliens coming to America encounter are the immigration laws. We have now sent a crystal clear message to the entire world. Come to America. We will not only allow you to violate our laws, we can't wait to reward you beyond your wildest dreams if you're willing to violate our laws. Really? Does that make any sense to anybody? Please tell me.
All of it makes makes me nauseous, makes me scared, makes my head spin, and Am
I getting anything wrong from what you said?
And again, I live in New York City. I could talk about that till the cows come home. It has just become the Wild West. But and this isn't just people that are criminals that are here illegally. I mean, this is just in general. But just to get back, to your, you have a lot of area of expertise, but, in terms of the border, it's never about that. I always go back to my grandparents. I'm not saying no, I'm saying we need to have a process. We need to know why everybody's here. We need to know where they are.
We have the process.
I cannot walk, to enforce it. I cannot go into a building. I cannot go into a building in New York
without
City.
ID.
Without ID. I went to a comedy, I was on the lineup. I went to a comedy show at some bar. The guy asked me for my license. I was like, okay, he took it out of my hands, which I didn't think quick enough, and scans it. And I go, where, why are you scanning it? And I go, where is it going? And he was, such a stupid oof, like a big, galoof. He's like, oh, I don't know. It's in the computer. And because I was an auditor. So my background, it was CPA auditor. So I've got that mentality. So, I've told my comedian friends, don't give your ID out. Don't give your social out. Don't, anyway, that's a longer story.
No, but the point is this.
But it's all about security and securing yourself.
Yes. And there's nothing worse than the only thing worse than no security is false security. Mm-hmm. And so the Fourth Amendment is gone. Everything is gone because we're supposed to be safe. We have criminal aliens on airplanes that are using their warrants of arrest from immigration as valid ID to get on an airplane. What in the world are we doing? And at what point do we say this is enough? We're helping people decide to use fentanyl. If you go down Roosevelt Avenue, you will see money wire services that are running 24/7. How many of the people standing online at 3 a.m. do you think just got out of work and said, gee, I got to send my wife some money? No, these are consummated drug deals. Remember, I spent almost 15 years with the Drug Task Force and with DEA Intel. So my perspective is very different because I've lived in a whole bunch of worlds, okay? So I did drug investigations. I went after fugitives. I've arrested terrorists. I arrested an IRA terrorist. Barry Scheck was his defense attorney, in fact. So it's not that I read about it. Most of the people on TV and they'll say things like, well, if they've been living here for the last 6 years and they've never been arrested, okay, how do you know how long they've been living here? The guy that runs the border doesn't create a record of entry. We have no capacity to interview them, certainly no capacity to go out and do a field investigation. And you know what? Having been an adjudicator, I can tell you, when they say we're going to clear up the backlog, what does that mean? It means we're going to approve everything, because you can approve a petition in 15 or 20 minutes, but it takes days or weeks to deny an application. So when you get the order approved, and by the way, when Mayorkas was the head of Citizenship and Immigration Services, right? They're America's locksmith. You make the wall go away with a green card or a US passport. He ordered his people to approve almost every application, including when the FBI came to him and said, these applications come from a company linked to Iranian terrorists. He said, I don't care. We're approving those petitions. And he did. So he was found guilty of malfeasance by the Inspector General when he worked for Obama. The Republicans, to their credit, raised that issue during the confirmation hearings. And the Democrats said, that's cool. We don't care. So the guy that said approve everything is now running the entire Department of Home. I call this now the Department of Hospitality Services. How's
All right,
that?
listen, everybody, we've run out of time. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight. But we're going to have Michael Cutler back. You are a wealth of information, and I respect you so much as a person. I'm proud to call you my friend. And
It's mutual,
the
Karen.
work that you do, and your genius, the memory that you have, the attention to.
I have a secret. No, there's a secret. I have my notes written on the inside of my eyelids. Don't tell anybody.
You know what? I don't know how you do it, but you are an American, my friend. And
oh, absolutely. You betcha. I'm like my grandpa. You can call me anything you want, but you better call me American.
Tell people where they can find you. Your podcast is on its.
Sure, you can find me in the Lost and Found. No, that's the.
I'm going to put all your links on the page anyway.
Yes, but michaelcutler.net is my website. One word. The Michael Cutler Hour on Blog Talk. And by the way, folks, this is the season of barbecues and picnics and get-togethers. Please sit down with your friends and families, have discussions, not fights. Those don't work. Sit down and have the discussions. My articles will give you all of the intellectual ammunition that you need. Please ask people to keep an open mind. The future of America, the future of our children, the future of our grandchildren hang in the balance. And I've traveled across this amazing country. The Tea Party had me speak right after Newt Gingrich, believe it or not, knowing that I'm a lifelong Democrat from Brooklyn, and they gave me 25 minutes. That's what America's supposed to be like.
That's
okay.
Right.
We're supposed to share our ideas because no one has all the answers. Okay. But please sit down with your neighbors, have conversations. Let's celebrate the First Amendment. That's why they're going after it, because they know that if we put our heads together, we will see through their bullshit and see through their betrayal. We, the people, have work to do, and it starts with the truth.
That is Michael
Democracy
Cutler.
is not a spectator sport.
Follow him and sign up for his emails. My name is Ellen Karis. Go to my website, ellenkaris.com. Thank you so much, Michael Cutler. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
We'll have you back on again. Thank you. Okay, take care. Bye, everybody.
So long.
Bye.